Hello, my dear anxious adventurers. This week I'm doing a mini episode. I'm going to be trying something new, and I want it to feel more conversational, as if you and I were out having coffee, talking face to face. The reason I'm switching it up a bit is because I've been in a space lately that feels like things are constantly changing and pivoting in my life right now. You may have noticed that the episodes are covering a lot of different topics like meditations, crystals for traveling, and talking about community, which in fact are very much reflective of what I'm going through in my life right now. And even though this may seem random, it is all on purpose. My life has been dramatically shifting, and if I'm being completely honest with you, it still is. Things are unfolding as we speak. And I want to cut out all the pretense from here on out and really start to share what I'm learning with you, because I feel like these things are really very important. I've been in this phase of life these past 4 years of reconnecting with who I am. It sounds profound, and it is, really, but only when I look back on it, because it's been in such small increments, moments at a time. The pandemic changed a lot of things for many of us. I'm not sure about you, but this period of time in my life changed how I look at life and how I live life. But it wasn't because of what was happening in the outside world. My world was shifting and changing because of what was happening close to me at home. Early in 2020, my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. All cancer is terrible, but this particular one is one of the worst. It often goes undetected until it's too late, and people are given a very short period of time to live. My mom was my very best friend. In her own words, we are soul sisters, and we are very connected. So connected that we would often go to each other for guidance in all sorts of matters, difficult or otherwise. I learned a lot in those last 9 months with my mom. I promised her that I would walk with her on this journey until her very last breath, no matter how difficult it was. And it was extremely difficult. I remember there was one time in the very beginning of her diagnosis where she was trying to decide which treatment to do. She was being told so many conflicting things by doctors, family members, friends, and me. I remember her sitting on the love seat in her room, asking me what she should do. I had no clue. I couldn't imagine being faced with a death sentence and having to decide what to do. All I could tell her was to follow her intuition. But to be completely honest, I had no clue what that even meant. I learned a valuable, hard lesson with my mom in those last 9 months together. And her death that September really started this path that I'm on today. People always say to follow your intuition, but what does that actually look like? I talk about travel and intuition because those were really the only times in my life where I could really see, feel, hear, and understand it. It always feels heightened or more clear and loud when I travel. But it wasn't until 2 years ago that I really started to listen to that still small voice inside me. And that's when I started to reconnect with who I am and have always been. We are told at a very young age that we don't know anything. There's an automatic assumption that since we are babies, toddlers, children, or teens, that we don't know what adults know. How could we? We just arrived on this planet, right? But did we really? No, I'm not talking about aliens, though it is a favorite subject of mine. But what I believe is that we all came from a place of knowing, a place where we have everything we need. All the answers inside us. However, as young kids, unless we were taught otherwise by our parents, we are told we don't know anything and everything has to be learned. So we go through our younger years starting to believe this is true until we get to be an adult and it's finalized. We really don't know anything. We then struggle through the rest of our lives believing what we were told when we were young, we don't know. Sure, we start to learn things along the way and get more intelligent using our intellect to get us through tough situations until we come to a point in our lives that is unfathomable and we cannot possibly decide what to do because it comes down to a 50-50 chance. And how can we possibly know what to decide? Because it means choosing life or death. This is my story, of course, but when I lived through this with my mom, I tried my best to help her through that journey her soul chose to go through. But I had no clue what I was doing and felt so lost and utterly helpless at times. I knew deep down inside me that there had to be a better way of doing this thing we called life. I had glimpses of my intuition, but it seemed so elusive, like it would disappear or go dormant after I came back from my trips. When my mom transitioned, I knew I didn't want to live in the dark anymore. I didn't want to be anxious and stressed out all the time about life. So, true to form, I started doing my research, learning about what happens after death, learning about mediumship, psychic abilities, and intuition. I wanted answers, and I wanted to know how to trust my intuition before it was too late, before my life got to a moment where I had to decide what to do, giving me a 50-50 chance at living or dying. And that is when I was led to Echo Bodine. I've mentioned her before. She's salt of the earth, and she just so happens to be a psychic and a healer. She was the perfect teacher and mentor for me because she wasn't super spiritual and she grew up going to church. Yet, she was who she was, and I liked that about her. She was offering a class on intuition, so I jumped at the chance to learn from her. So today I want to share some of the things I learned along the way in case you too are wanting to reconnect with who you truly are. To do that, though, we first got to talk about the elephant in the room. The elephant being that we are disconnected. The first step to reconnecting with yourself is knowing where you are currently at. So first, I want you to take a moment and think about where that is while I talk about the word disconnection. The word disconnection is defined as to sever the connection of or between. That word sever is such a strong word. It seems so final, but that's essentially what we were taught to do at a very young age, to sever that connection from our knowing and listen to what others were telling us. I'm not saying this was done intentionally, but if our parents weren't connected to their intuition, then what else were they going to teach us? So then, how do we reconnect with this part we severed our connection with so long ago? One way is by listening. And this is really the only way to start. We have to get real still and listen. As Echo told us in the intuition classes, start talking to your intuition. Make it a normal thing that you do every single day. Ask it questions and then listen. Echo was fortunate to have a mom who taught her about her intuition and how to listen to it. And her mom would always tell her, "What does your tummy say? Listen to your tummy." So with nothing else to really go off of, I started listening to my tummy. Not literally, but I would practice on my afternoon walks. I started asking simple questions that had yes and no answers, and ones I already knew the answers to. An example of this was, did the sun come up this morning? Which was an obvious yes, I realized. However, I would ask the question and then go silent and listen. At first, my mind was so noisy that I couldn't hear the answer, but I kept at it until one day I heard, yes. It was a faint whisper, but I heard it, and it was indeed an answer that came from a deeper part of myself. I heard the difference because it wasn't the smartass remark that my mind would respond with. After that, I continued to practice until I started to hear things like, cross the street. So I would cross the street. And on the other side, I would find a penny or beautiful raven feather. It felt like a game, so I continued developing it until it started to get louder and louder. These small games I would play with my intuition were fun and always had an outcome that benefited me in some way or another, even if I didn't realize it at the time. But what these fun games were really doing was building trust between myself and my intuition again. I knew if I could learn to trust my intuition in these small moments in life, then I could certainly start to trust it in the bigger life moments too. Even now, a year and some change later, I still play this game with my intuition. I've gotten really good at hearing and feeling the difference of when my ego answers and where that is in my body versus where I feel it and hear it when my intuition answers. I'll give you a quick example. A couple months ago, I was going on one of my Friday adventures where I go wherever my whim takes me. It was raining here in San Diego, and when it rains, San Diegans really don't know how to drive that well in the rain. Plus, our roads are not made to handle heavy rain, so there's often flooding or big puddles on the roads where you can hydroplane. So it can be really scary. I don't love driving in the rain, and I could feel myself starting to get really anxious as I set off on my adventure for the day. At one point during my drive, the rain was coming down so hard that I could barely see what was in front of me. I felt myself starting to panic, and that's when it popped into my head, go to your intuition. So I did. I said out loud, "Am I going to be safe?" And I heard, "Yes." Immediately, my panic and anxiety disappeared. I felt my body go calm, and I was so relaxed the rest of the drive. And guess what? I arrived safe and sound. I know that's a small moment, but the effect of knowing this was true and trusting my intuition 100% was so profound and life-changing. I didn't have to be scared anymore. I didn't have to be anxious anymore. I could ask my intuition these questions and know that I am safe. Your intuition is always going to be neutral and calm. It will sound like you, but calm and neutral. It's never going to be dramatic, negative, panicked, overly excited, or anxious. At first, it may answer with just one or two words, but the more you work with it, the more conversational it can get. And here's something important to know. Sometimes you won't get an answer. It will just be silent. Oftentimes, that means you're not quite ready to receive the answer. Your intuition is going to give you what you need to know when you need to know it. Not any sooner or later, but just at the right divine time. And it always will serve your highest good, no matter what. So this practice will require some patience, as well as some gentleness on your part. The more you practice, the stronger the connection will become until one day you just know. And you no longer need to ask the question first. This is when you start to live in the flow of life, where things simply come to you, where your days are less chaotic, and you meet people at the right place at the right time. It almost feels like magic. Now, I won't get into the next steps of where you could go from here. That's a message for a different episode and is a bit more supernatural, but I will leave you with this. Your true self is already inside you. All you need to do is decide to reconnect with that part of you. After all, this life is an adventure, and we are meant to live it as such. Until next time, my dear adventurers. Ciao. Besos. Mwah.